And now, what you've all been waiting for, the grand opening of Clay Studio. Dun, 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 dun. So, the first thing you need to know about Clay Studio is that if you want to reserve your space at Clay Studio, you must take the marker and write your name in one of these 4 places. Only 4 people will work at Clay Studio. You must make sure that you write your name at the same place where you will be working. We have workstations 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay? And there's an important reason for that, because at the end of class, your workstation will show your name over here with your last initial is a good idea. And that way we can mark your clay at the end of class because you'll put it in this box 1, 2, 3, 4 according to where you were sitting. So let's talk about clay. How to use clay. When you're joining parts, you've got to make sure that you wet it, score it. You grab one of those little paper clips, and after you wet it on both sides where you're joining pieces, you scratch it with one of the paper clips, and then you got to smooth it. That will help it stick together, otherwise it falls apart. This poster has some nice ways to make a pinch pot also. And down here at the bottom, keep these tips in mind. Rules: keep it on the tray, no pounding. So these are the trays. Please keep them on the tray, not the table. Tips: it needs to be fatter than your pinky and thinner than your thumb if it's clay to keep, otherwise it will break. If your clay is hard and cracked, that means it's too dry. You need to rub a little water on it. So if you're making clay that you want to keep, there are some things that you must keep in mind. If you're making clay and we're going to fire it, it has to be thicker than your pinky and thinner than your thumb, because big pieces must be hollow, because if not, they will explode. And number 2, you got to make sure that it's well made. It needs to be smooth and look like something. Remember, it's okay to practice. You don't need to keep everything that you make. So these are no objects because they're not really anything. They're just a mushy pile of clay. These are yes objects that are worth keeping. Number 3, you got to make sure, like we talked about earlier, that you do the 3 steps: score, wet, and smooth, to join the parts, because parts must be well joined so they don't fall apart as they're drying before we fire them. So you should kind of be able to gently shake or move your clay object without breaking it. And then 4, that one, our studio cleanup crew for clay is going to take care of this year. And just keep in mind, when I do get it, or when do you get it back, because people always want to know when they'll get their fired clay back. It takes about 60 days to dry out so it can be fired in the kiln without exploding. Now you might be wondering, if you didn't know already, what the kiln is. Inside this room over here, we'll take a quick look, is something called a kiln. That's spelled K-I-L-N. That's the kiln right there. The kiln is a place where we fire the clay. So when this is full, then I turn it on, and it gets really, really hot, like way hotter than your oven at home. And it turns the clay hard, like these objects right here. These are some fired clay objects. They've been fired, so they make a different sound from clay objects that have not been fired. You can hear the difference. So let's go back over here and look real quick at what's on the clay table. Once you're ready to start working and you've signed up over there, then you'll get a piece of clay out of this box. And yes, it's real clay. It's made out of little bits of rock that have been washed up next to a river. They erode. And you can use tools to work with it. We have different rolling tools, some marking tools. Those are the paper clips that you need to use for scoring and joining, and some other tools for cutting. That's what these are. You can scoop and cut pieces of clay out. And there's some smaller ones too. These are really good for smoothing the clay in that last step right there, okay? And this is the water with brushes for wetting the clay. There's also some different clay sculpture techniques. And these books are about clay, working with clay, and they have wonderful projects. People have really liked using these books to get ideas and how to do different clay projects. And then at the end of class, when the timer goes off, beep, 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 you immediately, if you think it's clay to keep, you immediately put it into this box at the same number as where you were working. So if you were working over here at number 4 and you made something amazing that we should fire in the kiln, you'd stick it in this square, number 4, and then quickly go to the mat, just like usual. So that is Clay Studio.